Before we get started with the actual program, we're going to discuss how to move through sets, repetitions, and increase the intensity or weight or resistance with each exercise. All of these exercises will be either done with a light dumbbell weight, a light wrist weight that can be attached to the wrist, or some type of elastic tubing that has a handle or something to hold on to. As we go through the program, you're going to want to increase your sets, repetitions, and even the weight. In some instances, you may actually start the exercise with no weight at all. You may just use the weight of your arm or hand as the resistance. But as we go through, you'll start to add resistance. The example I'm going to use starts us off with 1 pound. If we start our series of exercises with 1 pound, we'll begin with 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions. As we go through the weeks, we'll start to increase our repetitions before we increase resistance or weight. We'll do our 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions for 2 weeks, and at that point increase to 15 repetitions with the 1 pound. 2 weeks later, we'll increase with 20 repetitions, and then 25, and finally we'll be doing 1 pound at 2 to 3 sets of 30 repetitions. We'll now maintain that for 2 weeks. At that point is a good time to increase the weight or increase the challenge on the muscle. We'll go up 1 pound to 2 pounds. So now we'll be performing our series of exercises with 2 pounds at 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions again. And we'll now work our way back through the series. So again, in 2-week increments, we'll go up to 15 reps, and then 20 reps, 25, and 30. So now at 2 pounds, 2 to 3 sets of 30 repetitions, we'll then add 1 pound. Now we're up to 3 pounds, but we'll go back to our starting sequence of 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions. Once we work through our sequence, the maximum resistance that you will want to use for these exercises is 5 pounds. So when you get to the point that you're doing 2 to 3 sets of 30 repetitions with 5 pounds, that's kind of where you plateau or stay at now. If you try to advance past 5 pounds, you'll just recruit larger muscles, and now you'll defeat the purpose of the program. So 5 pounds will be our maximum. With regards to elastic resistance, we'll discuss specifically during those exercises how much to stretch the tubing or how much resistance to use on that tubing. Lastly, before we get going, regardless of your situation, whether you're using this program to rehabilitate from an injury or whether you don't have an injury, you want to make sure that you're working with your sports medicine professional to modify the program to meet your specific needs so that you can do so without getting injured. Now let's get started with this program. The first exercise of the BUCHBERGER 12 is the side-lying abduction. For the side-lying abduction, we'll use a light dumbbell, and this exercise will specifically target the supraspinatus muscle of the rotator cuff. With the side-lying abduction, we'll be positioned as I am here with the back knee bent. I'm going to use my right shoulder, so I'm going to perform the exercise with my right arm. I'm going to hold the weight out with my palm facing the floor and the back of my hand toward the ceiling. I'm going to allow the hand to drop down next to my thigh, and I'm going to lift it up just to the top of the knee. So again, straight up. And I'm going to take 2 seconds to go up, and I'm going to count down approximately 6 seconds going down. 2 seconds up, and 6 seconds down. Make sure that you avoid allowing the arm to cross over in this plane. Make sure that the arm moves in a very linear plane. 2 seconds up, 6 seconds down, stopping just at the top of the knee, and that keeps us below the impingement zone. If we start to go above the knee, now the shoulder starts to get into the impingement zone, and that's where we run into trouble. So again, 2 seconds up, 6 seconds down, staying below the impingement zone, working that supraspinatus muscle. 6 seconds down, And again, be sure not to cross over like this. The exercise should be done like this. The next exercise is what's called the plus. What we're trying to do here is to actively protract or push the shoulder blades out. This exercise is good for two specific muscle groups: the serratus anterior muscle, which stabilizes the scapula or shoulder blade, and the subscapularis muscle, which is the one rotator cuff muscle that actually sits in the front of the shoulder. The plus exercise is begun in a hands and knee position first. This way we start to learn the motor pattern of how to use the scapula without using the elbows, without using the back. So positioning is very important, and learning the motion. From there we'll progress into a more challenging position, which will be into a full push-up position. So first I'm going to get down on my hands and knees. In the hands and knees position, we'll have the hands under the shoulders and the knees under the hips. The back is arched and supported, and we want to maintain a good active lumbar lordosis in the low back. Next, we'll keep the elbows straight, and we'll allow the scapulas to retract, and then protract actively, but not release the lumbar lordosis. So again, here's protraction, retraction, protraction. Now I am going to do a set that is done the wrong way. A lot of times you will see an athlete perform them like this, where they retract and then round out their thoracic spine. That is not the way we want this done. Hold the lumbar lordosis, and all the motion occurs at the scapula. This will limit your motion, so don't try to get more motion than you have the ability to get. Let it come gradually as you progress. Now, in the push-up position, this is more challenging. Again, holding the back supported and allowing all the motion to come from the shoulder blades. Resist the tendency to want to flex the elbows. The next exercise is what I call the field goal exercise. This is a very difficult and challenging exercise. You should have a base with some of the easier exercises before you try this one. It involves strengthening of the scapular stabilizers as well as the rotator cuff. We'll do this laying face down. I'm using wrist or cuff weights. This can be done holding hand weights as well. It doesn't have to be done with cuff weights, but it does make it a little easier. We'll also put a Dynadisc, which is an air-filled pad, and we'll put this under my chest to give me a little bit of support. I'll be laying face down, and my first move will be to pull my shoulder blades back, lift my elbows up to 90 degrees, turn my thumbs back and externally rotate. And then I'll reverse the motions, holding my scapula to the end, and then relaxing the shoulder blades. That will be the hardest part of the entire phase. You need good scapular coordination, and you need good basic strength in the rotator cuff in order to perform this. So again, this is a late stage exercise. We're positioned lying face down, the arms hanging off the edge of the table. First maneuver will be to pull the shoulder blades back. Second, lift the elbows. And third, turn thumbs up and externally rotate. Now reversing the motions, down, hold the shoulder blades as the arms drop, and then relax them. And one more time. Be sure to perform each motion specifically. The next exercise is the concentric eccentric exercise. This exercise will work the posterior or back side of the rotator cuff, the infraspinatus and teres minor muscles. There are two phases to the exercise. The first phase works the backside or infraspinatus and teres minor muscles in a short lever but concentrically, and the second phase works those muscles with a long lever and eccentrically. So concentric means that the muscle is shortening while it's contracting, and eccentric means that the muscle is contracting while it's lengthening. So that's more of a control phase. This exercise is done in a side-lying position. The elbow is placed on this little bump here on your pelvis, or the ASIS, or anterior superior iliac spine. The elbow is kept at 90 degrees, holding the dumbbell. First, again in a short lever, we will externally rotate, then reach up, and now turn the thumb down, and in a long lever, very similar to the follow-through or deceleration phase of throwing or striking. So, short lever concentric, long lever eccentric. In the second phase, you'll want to know what your follow-through angle is and try to do the exercise according to your follow-through angle. Some will have a follow-through angle that is higher up, and some will have a follow-through angle that is lower down. If you're having pain in the front of the shoulder from either an AC joint problem or an impingement, you'll want to take a lower angle. But again, you should be working with your sports medicine professional on whether or not this exercise is causing a problem for you or whether it's helping you. So again, concentric, eccentric. And lastly, if you've been diagnosed with a posterior instability in the shoulder, the second phase of this exercise is not for you. Again, you should be consulting with your sports medicine professional on that. So one more rep. The next exercise is called the modified empty can exercise. It's very important to understand that this is not a traditional empty can exercise. In fact, the empty can exercise is detrimental to the rotator cuff. What we've done is modified it slightly to make it more functional and more applicable to the overhand athlete. This helps control the rotator cuff through a motion while the shoulder is lifting and externally rotating. It primarily will work the supraspinatus muscle of the rotator cuff. In the modified empty can exercise, we'll use light dumbbell weights, put our thumbs over the top. We will actually start with the thumbs back and the arms at the side, backs of the hands into the legs. As I lift up, my thumbs will be down, but at about 45 degrees of elevation, I will start to turn my arms over while I continue to lift. So it'll look something like this. Notice that my upper arm stays in the scapular plane or the position of scaption, roughly about 30 degrees to my body. As I turn the thumbs up, my elbows continue to lift, so my finishing position is in the scapular plane at about 100 degrees of elevation. Like I'm throwing my hands out and then turning them up. Be very sure to do this very controlled. As you lift the hands up, the head of the humerus or the upper arm must actually be depressed into the joint space. Be careful to avoid very rapid motions that are uncontrolled like this. Do not allow or throw the weights back. That is the wrong way. Again, the correct way, slow, controlled, all the way through the motion, lifting the elbows. And controlling the weight on the way down. The next exercise is what's called a T-curl with pronation and supination, which refers to the position of the hand. This exercise is used to develop the brachialis muscle at the arm and elbow, as well as the bicep in a functional position that will gradually enhance the strength of the insertion of the bicep at the labrum, which is an area of common injury in baseball. And then the brachioradialis muscle, which is, again, a muscle that's important in elbow and wrist stabilization. We'll use elastic resistance, and one thing that we want to make sure that we start with when we use our elastic resistance is a very light resistance. Concentrate on the mechanics of the exercise and not necessarily how hard it is to perform that exercise. Allow time to gradually build up strength and endurance. Work on endurance first with elastic resistance and allow strength to happen later on. So use those 2-week intervals that we discussed earlier with regards to increasing repetitions. I'm going to hold the elastic tube in the handle. We're going to put the arm straight out and keep the elbow nice and high as we flex the elbow in with the palm toward me. That is supination. Allow it to go back, turn the palm down. That is now pronation. Hold the wrist in extension and pull the tube in. As we pull this way, we work a little bit more of the bicep in supination. And as we pronate, now we work more of the brachialis and brachioradialis muscles. Again, pronation, or supination, I'm sorry. Now pronation. We want to make sure that the elbow stays up. If the elbow starts to drop, that is a hint that the scapula is unstable and we are having trouble stabilizing the shoulder blade while we perform this motion. So that means we go back to our scapular stabilizing exercises within the program. So again, pronation, supination.